Yeah.
So the idea was that he's sort of zipping through the universe, being presented with all of his many crimes, right? And so bodies are being thrown at him, he lands, and things through the bodies, like hands are grasping at him, it's just really kind of grim. And then at the end, he gets dumped in front of the living tribunal who judges him guilty.
Guilty!
Something like that, yes. And it was great. It was, when you introduce the idea of the living tribunal, it does open up a whole new era.
Well, it's also...
I don't know if my grandmother would understand that.
Well, it's also, if that guy exists, why is Thanos a problem?
Right.
Just have him smack him around a little bit.
Well, and I've seen the scene. At the end of the scene, you know, Thanos realizes the smoke and mirrors, and it ends. It seems like it was a smart cut because what you really let happen to kind of bungle the Battle of Titan is Star-Lord's emotions get the better of him.
Oh, Star.
Which I thought was really a smart move.
Well, we are also in the middle of a very, you know, highly paced fight, and to stop it, to have a LSD trip, was fun, but kind of sucked the air out of the punching.
Yeah, makes sense. You know, I'm sure you all know that these two fine fellows wrote the first cinematic iteration of Black Panther in Captain America: Civil War, and they did a fantastic job. Here, you had the odd task of writing the first iteration of Captain Marvel before the Captain Marvel movie had been shot. So
Yes.
I'm curious what kind of collaborating or conversations you had with Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, and Geneva Robertson-Dworet, who were all the co-writers with Boden and Fleck directing Captain Marvel before they went off to shoot. Just really briefly.
Well, it was an even weirder situation than the Black Panther situation, because our take on Panther was going to come out first, so it could at least stand on its own.
Right.
We were writing and filming a Captain Marvel who people would only see after they had seen a movie that was not written and filmed yet.
20 years after.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 20 years after she had gone to space at the end of the movie.
So you're writing a character that has to be, has to work in your movie, has to be strong and have her own personality, and yet has to be able to be different from something that hasn't been written yet. Hey, by the way, that's 20 years earlier. I don't, you know, I don't know how.
So we just did it.
Well, yeah. So I remember sitting next to Anna and Ryan as they watched Brie Larson on her first day as Captain Marvel, not in their movie. You know, it is so weird.
That's so much.
Well, we certainly ran everything by them and said, hypothetically, do you think 20 years from now she might be like this in the thing you haven't written yet? Yes.
That's insane. You know, working with Kevin Feige, he's the man with a plan, and he really brought all these elements together. And I'm just curious as writers, because writers always have to take notes from executives. What was an interesting note that maybe you remember Feige giving you on this Herculean task of stitching together two movies that are also standing alone as separate entities? If there's one that strikes you of an interesting note from Kevin Feige. That helped you see the forest for the trees, because you could easily get lost in such a task.
Sure, right.
Well, yeah, there certainly, you get handed these two movies, and your first reaction is panic, because that's a lot of work, and if it is bad, you will be very embarrassed 1 year, and then you have to wait around, because you know you're going to be embarrassed next year. But there's also this great potential for it to be a gigantic moneymaker and a gigantic cultural moment, and Kevin doesn't want to hear any of the crap because he wants to make a good movie, as he rightly should, and doesn't want to hear you talking about box office, doesn't want to hear you talking about pressure, just wants to hear you talking about story. And he said, just stick the landing. Just remember Mary Lou Retton from the Olympics? She stuck the landing.
Right.
And that's what people remember. She may have wobbled up here. I don't know if she did or not.
She did. She was awesome.
But bam! And like, if that means cutting the Guardians out of this movie, if that means, you know, shrinking it to make it more manageable, but make it a good movie, do that.
Right.
And that's why both movies went under the code name Mary Lou 1 and Mary Lou 2.
Oh, really?
To keep everyone who knew it on the ball, like, don't crawl up whatever part of your body you're gonna crawl up. Stick it.
Can I get a one shot here? Can anybody zoom in?
If you could zoom in on Steven's phone, he has video he
There we go.
actually
So
wants
then
to show.
this meant so that after
Sure.
it broke all sorts of records, we called in a friend to sort of congratulate Kevin and Victoria.
Hi everyone, it's Larry from Redmond, and I'd like to congratulate Kevin, Markus, Victoria, the entire cast, everyone involved in the Avengers series. I give it a perfect 10 because y'all stuck that landing.
Well, I will say this, when the day comes that Wheaties finally put screenwriters on the box,
Yes.
you have my votes.
I mean, we don't eat Wheaties. Look at that.
Yeah.
Here's why you have my votes for the box of Wheaties. Avengers Endgame made $852.7 million in the United States, $1.9 billion worldwide, for a cum of $2.8 billion worldwide. So congrats on having a story that really resonated, because those numbers, absolutely, those numbers mean one thing. It means second viewing. It means you captured people's imagination. But I wanna kind of take away the glory for a second, if I can.
Thank you.
And I want to take you off the pedestal, because facing the blank page has no glory. And it's a tough thing to do. And so, just to bring things down to the room, what was your darkest moment? Your toughest day on Avengers Endgame? It could be a story issue, it could be a personal issue, where in this huge journey of doing these two films back to back, you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, or I don't know if I'm going to get through this day.
It's opportunity.
You know, foster the writing of a movie so that they're not a panic-based company. There are many companies in Los Angeles that freak out.
Oh, we would have been fired.
Slap a first draft in front of them, and they freak out because it's a first draft. Because everybody wants a third draft for a first draft. Marvel knows damn well what a first draft is, and then they work on it. And that means you never leave the conference room, but it makes a good movie.
Structurally, one of the great accomplishments is that fans hadn't seen Infinity War in a year. There was a sense of wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
And you literally killed Thanos 19 minutes and 3 seconds in to the movie in Act 1. So it's wish fulfillment, but it's crazy. Because it's an empty death. It just feels so empty, and it doesn't solve their problems. When did that idea come about? Because I think it's brilliant, because it gets what everybody wants out of the way, but then leaves them in their seats saying, wait, what's the other 2 hours of this movie?
Well, we
I didn't
wanted
want them
you
to
not
die. I
to, we
wanted
wanted
the
to
time
take your
to
expectations away
snap.
but that comes from Thanos as an omnipotent and omniscient villain. Like, no one in their right mind would create a villain who can do anything at any time. If you go to fight him, he can see you coming. He can make you turn into a bunch of blocks. He can do anything he wants. So the whole time we're spending a couple months going, what do we do with this guy? And I think it was Trin Tran, our executive producer. I don't think she was suggesting this. She was just complaining. She said, why can't we just freaking kill him? And we all went, whoa. What if we killed him? That would help
Why
us.
didn't the Avengers ever think of that?
Why would he let you kill him? Well, because his mission is over. That makes sense.
It's frankly, weirdly enough, killing him helps him as a character. Because
Aw.
it cements,
Yes, it does.
cements the fact that he really
My
is
mom's
doing
there,
this
so
for
they're all
his
watching
stated
my mom.
purpose. He's not going to then sit on a golden throne and,
Bring me all the cookies in the universe.
more skulls. No, he's done. And that's the most sort of shattering thing to the Avengers. Not that he won, but that he really did mean what he said.
Yeah, it gives him time to write his new book, Gardening Through Carnage. I can't wait to see it.
And he makes soup.
Yes.
Thanos makes soup.
I'm going to do this next bit in my best SpongeBob SquarePants TV show voice. I'm curious about the moment when, after killing him, you flash up a title card that says, 5 years later. Everybody was shocked, and this has ripples throughout the MCU, because you have now moved the timeline up to 2023. Everything it shows a finality again of the snap, and people people getting dusted. What was it like coming up with that concept? Because again, we're still making our audience question what's going to happen in the movie, which is a good place to have them in the first act.
Yeah. I mean, it's delightful to be given that kind of leeway, for one thing. Because then you get to, I mean, you say 5 years later, in your head you go, oh, you're telling a real story. You know, this is not, we're going to get out of jail fast. And it is a chance to really see what happens. You know, this whole movie, all of Endgame is about the effects of the last movie. And to really put these people through something, put failure, you know, dead center in the lives of the superheroes. And to crush them a little bit. Not just for, you know, not just because they got hit a few times in a fight, but because for 5 years they have lived with abject failure.
The first movie was a Thanos movie. People didn't know that going in, but it turns out he was a hero of the movie. And the second one was definitely going to be an Avengers movie, specifically the original 6 Avengers movie. And we knew we were escorting a number of them off the stage in various ways. So we wanted, selfishly, to do as much as we could with them, which meant move them along and do all the stories that we can. And so we talked a lot about that 5-year jump, giving us almost, if you know the What If comics, almost allowing us to do the What If for a number of our heroes.
I love What If.
Yeah, so, you know, what happens if this guy becomes depressed, or if this person gets married, and, you know, this person loses his faith, or what have you. So that's, a lot of these decisions are based on those things that we wanted to do, and you can only do that if you could jump some number of years. I mean, you jump 20, you gotta, like, your visual effects budget's higher.
Yeah, and your actors really like this stuff.
It was a great move, but interestingly, again, it allowed you to do a revision of something that you have been crafting. In the sense that Smart Hulk, as he's known, or Professor Hulk, was an idea that actually you had told me that you tried out in Infinity War, in the 3rd act, and you know, finally Bruce Banner and the Hulk could make peace to share the same body together and figure out a way through it. But as you said, it didn't work in the 3rd act of Infinity War because it just stood out like a sore thumb.
And that, again, is, you know, these movies are worked on up until release. You know, there's no point where people go, no, this is great, just screw it, let's go to Hawaii. We wrote it, we shot it, and then went on to shoot most of Endgame. And it was, he achieved union with the Hulk.
Basically,
while inside the Hulk buster.
That's right, that's how he beat.
Burst out and kicked Call of Duty's ass. His space ass. And it didn't work. It was completely the wrong tone for that moment in the movie. It was like this victory when we were headed toward a crushing defeat, and it was tone deaf. But we had already shot Endgame,
Right. So
where he was already Smart.
Imagine the first act of Endgame, he's Smart Hulk in all of those scenes, meaning when he goes to kill Thanos, meaning when they're sitting around the compound going, you know, when Tony's returning. So that required some adjusting, and it also meant that we could use the 5 years as the transition, right? Like you hint that he's got problems coalescing, and in the 5 years he figures it out. You have a couple of lines about gamma radiation, and he's eating pancakes, and off you go.
Well, it's also like you get it. I mean, part of the thing we learn every time you write a movie, and particularly a movie where it is on a continuing storyline, is you don't have to explain as much as you think. You know, you can go to Queens, people know who Spider-Man is. I don't need to see him get bitten by Spider-Man. Like, okay, he's a combination of Hulk and Banner. I get it. You know, just give me a crumb to hang on to as to how it happened.
Well, and it's great that you did it as a reshoot, which is the purpose of a reshoot, which is to add something to it. And you know, the fact that you're always kicking the wheels as writers, it's healthy and it's good, even though it's painful.
Well, part of the challenge and part of the pleasure of this giant task of these 2 movies is, how do you tell everything you need to tell, weave it together, and keep it light enough so that you're not bogging down all the time. And Big sequence where you see these two guys achieve union. Takes time and takes attention away from the story. A really funny scene where Hulk is eating pancakes. Fast, it's funny, it makes you really happy, and it is a scene I haven't seen in a superhero movie before. You know, let's accept that challenge and try to push the whole thing forward, push the genre forward.
Hear that, writers? Pancakes.
Pancakes.
You know, we're gonna go into the time heist. And the good news is that they just told me backstage they blocked out 2 hours.
Yeah.
Really get through it. No, we're not gonna go there. But what I love is you told me from Backstory Magazines that when you started on your time travel research, you actually consulted physicists. And I love that you did. Just tell us a snippet of something that they told you that resonated.
Back to the Future is bullshit. I mean, again,
Direct quote.
direct quote.
From a physicist.
That's it. So the quick answer to this is, you know, we knew we wanted to go back. What other franchise could do what we were allowed to do? Go back to the other movies to get your 6 MacGuffins and bring them forward to solve your problem, and allow yourself to do all sorts of emotional triage as you do it. People get to meet their fathers and mothers and whatnot. But if you operated by Back to the Future rules, every time you went back and came back, you would have a new Biff's Casino, right? I guess Back to the Future 2 rules.
It's a very old movie by now.
Well, they know.
You say Biff's Casino, it just went.
They know Back to the Future 2.
This is all age.
So you can imagine that if every time a new universe was created, we would get nowhere, and we wouldn't know how to solve anyone because which one did what. It was not helpful to us, and we were worried that maybe we couldn't even do this idea. But we brought legit physicists in, quantum physicists, who said it probably doesn't work that way. As much as I love those movies, it probably works this way if it works, because again,
Which it doesn't.
it doesn't. So the idea that branch realities of quantum travel, and that's where we said, we got Scott Lang, we can maybe do some of this. Like, there was a lot of light bulbs going off the way this film.
I think it's great. Actually, geeky question I'm going to ask a few today. Does Ant-Man survive the snap because he's in the quantum realm? Is there something special
Did
about it?
half of the quantum realm disappear?
Right, or was it he just coin flip lucky?
I think he coin flipped lucky because the stones do not differentiate between realms. Tardigrades.
Okay, had to ask. Now, one of the things that I've known in Hall H for years is whenever they show photos or videos, they tell you you have to keep your cameras down, you cannot take pictures. I'm telling everybody right now, you can take your cameras out because we have permission. These cool fellas have given us some images that I'm going to share. And for our fine AV techs here at Comic-Con, if we could prep photo 1.
Jeff naked.
You are going to see
How I had
the time stones of their war room, of the drawing room. If you could note, that's Backstory Magazine. That's our cover. Very good.
Very clever, Jeff.
Hand painted.
Very clever.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I forgot to tell them to do that earlier. But thank you, AV. So this is their original iteration of the stones. And as you can see, they're placing where they are, and then how many stones are together. And you could zoom in and look on this later. It's totally fine to take a picture. But how difficult was it as you were plotting the time heist to map that out, to realize your possibilities?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We didn't even know that Space Stone was also going to be in Captain Marvel. He could have got it from there.
Oh my God.
This is in between. I looked this up on my computer recently. This image is from 1 week after Comic-Con 2016.
Wow.
Because on my computer is pictures of me looking haggard, in the hallway, and then it's this. And so this is in between drafts 1 and 2, where we're trying to figure out, because our first drafts, they didn't go to all the same places. Specifically, they went to, we moved around a lot. We didn't go to the Avengers movie in that first draft. And Joe Russo said, why aren't we going to the Avengers movie? Right, we should do that. So this is a list of everywhere we could think that they had been in the movies. And now we're trying to figure out where we could go. So we eventually just sort of picked some places.
And below those are the legendary baseball cards.
Right.
Every single available Marvel character. And it really does start like this. you know, you throw that on the board and you go, is there a story there? Could we go Hamartage, Stark Towers, Hanley, and give me a side of fries?
Right.
Perfect. Thank you, AV folks. And the folks running AV and All Age do an amazing job, so please give them a round of applause. The difficulty with explaining time travel is that you're talking exposition.
Yep.
And you have a scenario where the Ancient One, who you realized was in 2012, she explains that the stones represent the flow of time. When you take one, you splinter time, creating alternate timelines. Smart Hulk counters that if after the mission they put the stones back at the moment from which they were taken, they will collapse the timelines. Essentially, Hulk smash time, which I think is a brilliant idea. So it's so easy. The Russo brothers did a fantastic job of adding visual flair to it, of the whole movie, yes, not just that one scene. What was it like to boil such tough exposition down to such a simple level that my kids can understand it?
Well,
that takes
Start by writing a 40-page
Yeah.
and then start trimming. I mean, we had to boil our time rules down to self. And it came down to the stones. The stones are going to hold the universe in place, effectively. Take them out, things start happening. And again, this is the pleasure of having this universe to deal with. We needed someone to explain it. Who's the most entertaining explainer in the Marvel universe? Let's get Tilda. She's not dead back then. We can get her.
And it's Doc Brown on the chalkboard. We call it that a lot, right?
Yeah.
It turns out we had to do that a number of times. Like the whole Hulk explanation, hot tub time machine, all that stuff. That is in large part because we showed it to some test audiences, and every time Nebula shot old Nebula, everyone said, well, why doesn't she disappear? Because we told you it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But we had to really underline it so that we go out of our way to just exposit the hell out of it. Yeah.
I think that's a great explanation. You know, just a quick geeky question. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we have a lot of other things
Well,
to
this
hit.
is the geeky question.
Yes. It's not going to get worse than this. There was a great movie this year that came out, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Won an Oscar, and it's interesting because you get into the multiverse, and that's a way that timelines can go. Even in Spider-Man Far From Home, we have, a conversation about Earth 616, and we know, because good geeks know that Earth 616 is the representation in the comics, and that the MCU is actually Earth 1999. Yes? Well, any names out there? All right, good. But nonetheless, did you ever decide that there was maybe a moment you were going to get into the multiverse?
It clearly exists, right? Because Doctor Strange has talked all about it. I mean, that's part of the fabric of that. And we may not, this may be where I disagree with Marvel or where they're going. I have no idea where Kevin Feige is going. I don't know what's happening tomorrow. I have no idea.
Are you okay?
But I'm a big believer in stakes. And if you tell me that I can just go get another Natasha and another Tony and we can keep rolling, then particularly my grandma's going to go, well, why didn't I watch that? And yeah, we are retraining the audience all the time. I may be wrong 2 years from now where I want all sorts of stories from people I already lost.
Well, particularly in a movie where we are very much heading toward some final resolutions, toward things ending, toward people leaving. If you go, yeah, but there's 75 Tonys out there, like 75 billion Tonys out there, your drama is going to suffer.
Right.
So
Your stakes are lower.
because your stakes are lower. Now these things may or may not be true, but for the concrete rules of your movie, you have to run with the people. You have to dance with who brung you, as they say.
Time travel opens up the doors to something that's always great, which is being able for a character to have another moment with a loved one who's departed.
Yeah.
What you guys did with Thor's arc, by turning him into Thor Lebowski, essentially, is something that's beautiful, but also he's been through a lot between what happened in Ragnarok and, again, even what happened in Infinity War.
Yeah.
And he has that great moment with his mother, which was fascinating because just like you didn't show the Power Stone being collected in Infinity War from Xandar,
Yeah.
here you actually don't show the reality stone being collected. We just see Rocket kind of sneak off with a syringe, which is hilarious in itself. But you take time in the middle of this action scene for an emotional beat.
Yeah.
And I think emotional tracking is important. When did you realize he was going to have that moment with his mom?
Well, we knew, once we figured out the sort of track we wanted Thor to be on, that he was really going to crumble, as many of us would. That the only person who could put him together, you know, we wrote a scene with him and Jane, but Jane isn't the person who put him back together. Odin is not the person who put him back together. Really, it only is his mom. And we couldn't have him run, get the stone, then go talk to his mom, and take, you know, disproportionately large amount of time. Plus, we never know how the ether turns into a stone. No one's ever seen it happen, it just happens.
It seemed for decorum that maybe getting it out of Jane Foster was better left off screen.
Well, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because I know that you wrote a scene, we talked about it in the backstory.
Indeed we did.
Yes, a scene that you cut where literally Rocket and Jane have a conversation, and he basically, rather than scaring her with this big syringe, kind of tries to explain what he's doing. And her being a scientist, she's like, oh, really, the quantum realm?
Yeah.
So
It was very satisfying, and I thought everybody came off well in it, but it was, you know, we had
you had a lot going on.
3-some-hour movie.
Yes.
And, you know, some things are better left for...
But look, the scene where the mom gave him the line, everyone fails at who they're supposed to be. The measure of a person and a hero is how they succeed at being who they are, which I think is a fantastic line. Also, Tony visiting his dad in 1970 in New Jersey was another great emotional track he beat. Now Tony is a father, visiting his own father, who he had differences with. And it's another giving us a moment to kind of reflect. What was it like putting in that emotional beat?
It was, I mean, it was meaningful on several levels. One, we you know, our first movie had Dominic as Howard Stark, and he was an Agent Carter, and we murdered Howard Stark in the Civil War. So we've been with Howard a long time. It's actually we're very fond of it. And to be able to bring him into a kind of closure with Tony was really satisfying. Also, over the course of these, my own father died, and after that I had a child. And, you know, the one thing I would like to ask him is, how the hell do you deal with this? And, you know, it was, you know, very satisfying to be able to take these two and put them together and give them a real, honest human moment within the craziness of the fact that he just traveled through time to get a magic stone, and you're in an army base that's underneath an army base that's, you know, that we also know has Dr. Zola running around in it. You know, to be able to find that emotional core within possibly the most bonkers section of the movie was really good.
That's sort of the big thing. Like, this can't be a shopping spree, right? We have to go back and do these 6 things, but each of those scenes needs to do more than one thing, and you know, that's perhaps the best one.
It was a great scene. The other greatest bit of emotional tracking was Black Widow and Hawkeye battling for who is going to sacrifice themselves to save half the universe. And it's a different kind of emotional tracking in which you're tracking emotion through action. So rather than the dialogue scenes that we just talked about, now it's emotion. I thought it was fantastic. What was it like writing that and coming up with who was going to live or who was going to die? Was there ever an iteration where Hawkeye lived?
Well, Hawkeye doesn't.
I mean, sorry, where Hawkeye died. Hello.
That's the second or third iteration of that. In fact, I mean, because a lot of that choreography is Joan Anthony saying, let's figure out a more intimate way to do this, and so that they're each, Kevin too, they're each fighting to be the hero. It's not a negotiation, right? You know, usually the other thing.
Yeah, you never want one of them to go, okay, you done.
Yeah.
They both have to be the one who wants to do it.
Right. And they both feel that they are the ones to do it for a number of reasons, right? He, because he doesn't deserve to keep going, and she, because this is the only thing that she's been working for all of her life, and certainly the last 5 years, is getting to this one place so that she can get everybody back.
It was a fantastic scene. What's so wild is that in 2011's Captain America, you show us the stone for the first time. We see Red Skull touch the Tesseract, the Space Stone, and the entire galaxy is shown suddenly through the top of the airplane. And at what point, because I know it could have been back then, at what point did you realize that Red Skull was going to be the keeper of the Soul Stone on Vormir?
Relatively early on, we wrote, it's hard to call it a manifesto when it didn't have one single point. It had about 50 points. We wrote a big document that was everything you could possibly do in these movies. Contradictory, just,
Sure.
hey, this guy's alive. And in there is the Red Skull is clearly alive and has been sucked either into or across space by one of the Infinity Stones. He's awesome. Let's find a way to use him. Let's tie this whole thing together. Let's go back to the first movie that we wrote, only Marvel's third movie. Chronology. And let's tie it all together. Now, we did send him into space and sent him away very much on purpose, but didn't know exactly where we were sending him to. But it was more fun than just smoking him into a piece of charcoal.
Yeah, I mean, and it was great because it left your options open. Geeky question. I like to recycle, and there's a thing, like when you recycle, you get your money back. When Captain America comes back with the Soul Stone to Vormir, does that...
Is Natasha deposit?
Yeah, do we get Natasha? Do we get Black Widow back?
It's not. Listen,
That ain't how it works.
I don't
Deposit,
know
no
what...
return, huh?
I don't know what... Listen. That is not the intent. The intent is...
Yeah,
It's
no,
another extreme.
I think you would have, there's a fascinating one-act play to be written of just Steve showing up and talking to the Red Skull, but...
How'd you know about my fan fiction?
You know,
all right.
I'm online.
How about this? How about this? Did you ever script out any scenes of Captain America confronting Red Skull in a kind of awkward moment when he's replacing the Soul Stone of like, yo, what's up?
Never wrote it. In the manifesto document, there was one theory that it's Cap who goes to space, encounters the Red Skull, and he has to collaborate with the Red Skull because the Red Skull knows about the stones in a way he didn't, and he would become this sort of Gollum.
Yeah, it's like the
Company.
Midnight Run.
I mean, the time ice is going great, but like we're gonna start running out of time, so I'm gonna skip over one thing that I thought was great, in which you basically revive your antagonist then in the middle of the time heist.
Right.
Just when we think the threat is over, Thanos comes back because of what's the term you use for it with the two nebulas? Because I love that idea.
Maybe the Wi-Fi sort of
Yeah,
thing.
Nebula dual Wi-Fi is what you told me, which I think is a great way to say it. But we're going to take another look into the writer's room, so we're going to go for the second writer's room photo. And we're going to just see for a moment, you can take your cameras out again, we're going to see for a moment what that third act was looking like. You have something about Steve and Tony trapped inside the compound, holding down the fort. I love the Wild West feel. It even says Tony dies at the very end in the far right bottom.
No, you're missing. It
dies.
says Tony Pie.
Oh, pies.
Everyone here gets a Tony pie.
So hungry. So what were some of the challenges of that third act? Because in the commentary, which is coming out in the 4K and Blu-ray home release.
Is
for
it?
Endgame. Yes, it is.
What day can I pick that up?
Very soon, and I've heard it.
Filming
And
the
you
hot
said
potato.
the wildest thing, your earliest iteration, was Thanos
Jump ball.
walking out
Yeah.
and
funny.
throwing down the head of decapitated Captain
Where's the woman
America
rush?
from 2012.
Yeah.
So good writers, they need to kick the tires.
Yeah.
You need to go through different iterations. What was it like to get a grip on your third act?
Well, apparently we also need to traumatize children.
No, that one was awesome.
It was, we were working on
Where does he see the
different
hammer?
ways to bring
What?
Thanos
Yes,
into
Steve
the
picks up
present
hammer.
day.
There's a
Because
Thor
we had
smashes
killed
it.
the present day's Thanos, but we had
Thanos
activated
smashes
past
it.
Yeah,
Thanos.
and then Captain Marvel saves him.
And in one, he, being Thanos, had, knowing it would take his nebula some time to go rejigger the time machine to bring him back. And So he went down to his present day Earth, which would be 2014,
14 probably, yeah.
and wiped it out and killed the Avengers. And then Nebula would turn on the time machine, he would walk through with the Avenger he had killed and go, I killed you again.
Right.
What are you going to do about it? Old Man Logan. It's a hell of a comic.
I think it's an awesome scene, but what's really interesting is that, again, wish fulfillment. We've been waiting a year to see them be able to do something that's a win.
Yeah.
And finally they've got the stones, even though the price was large. And we get the Hulk snap. And it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways you could do that. Does everyone come back at once? What you did structurally on the page was brilliant in such that for a moment you boiled it all down to one phone call from Hawkeye's wife. And then missiles come right at the compound, split the entire group up. They're now running around for a 10, 15-minute fight, to the point that even though we haven't forgotten, we've almost forgotten when the hero returns moment happens. What was that like to get straight in your head? And did everyone come back all at once?
It took a while.
Yeah, I mean,
We have one where they all come back to the exact same, to the compound. Like, boom, there they are. You hear Mr. Stark, and there's Peter coming around the corner. And then, like, we cut 5 minutes, and they're all eating pizza. It was terrible.
yeah.
Wait, a pizza party?
It wasn't Avengers Pizza Party. You gotta try things out.
You do.
But it was also, I mean, there are a lot of, because there is no hard, fast, real world factuality about this, we have to make up hard, fast rules in order for this thing to make sense. One of which is that everybody came back to the point where they disappeared. So then they had to get to our battlefield.
Right.
So that gave us a window of time where things still had to happen. It also meant that even though they had effectively solved the problem they set out to solve, it didn't feel like we ended the movie and then started it up again to fight Thanos. It still felt like we were working toward overcoming the final goal. So we couldn't bring them in until we had Thanos in, and it was part of it.
That's why On Your Left works so well. Right? 'Cause
On Your Left is a
it's
great
like
line.
going,
Yeah.
oh, now they did it.
Yeah.
Even though technically they kind of did it 15 minutes earlier.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
a bit of a shell game.
both times I saw it, the audience was clapping, at that moment. It's a great moment. During the battle, I'm curious, just a geeky question. We know from Iron Man 3 that Pepper Potts was infected with the extremist virus. Was there ever any chance of having her use those powers even though Tony neutralized?
Well, I think in Iron Man 3 it's established that they'll kill her if they're still.
There's always that. There's always that. All right, I had to ask.
Okay.
Was Nick Fury ever a part of the battle?
No.
Okay. No iterations, really.
I don't think we ever put him in. One, it was we have such a traffic jam of
Right.
heroes and so much power that to have a guy who's in combat would be just firing a gun is it doesn't come off well for Nick Fury, frankly. So
The death of Tony is an iconic scene.
Yeah.
What were the challenges writing it? Because, again, you boil it down to the least amount of dialogue. And I'm sure that there were earlier drafts
Oh, yeah.
where you needed to get it out there to be able to start revising.
This is why this is all a dance and why film is the most collaborative art form there is, right? We're sitting up here talking about writing. A lot of times we're in the room with Joe and Anthony, and Trent and Kevin Feige, and we're all sort of trying to noodle this together. But also, these actors have spent a lot of time with these characters. So Chris and I are very happy and did to write all sorts of lovely dying words for Tony Stark. Robert is not happy to say them, right? Robert knew this instinctively. Guy who has talked and talked and talked for many, many movies. When he doesn't talk, you are crushed. He knew that, and we didn't feel we could turn in a page where he didn't talk. So he says, listen, I want to do much, much less, and he's right.
There's been some debate online. I want to just set the record straight.
Yeah.
Are there actually two physical Captain Americas living on Earth in the same timeline at the same time, so that during the Battle of New York, while Hooded Cap is in New York, the other Cap is all the way across the country on Pebble Beach, having a round of golf with his family.
Pass.
Get out.
Okay.
He's in the same
Cap
fucking
doesn't
timeline.
golf.
Okay. Are there two caps on Earth? Would you agree to that?
There are varying theories. I am very entertained by that theory.
Entertained by that there. All right. Another geeky question. Gamora, a lot of people have asked questions about. I've boiled it down to 3 different ideas. One of which, when Tony snapped, Tony has technically never met Gamora, so he could have, in his mind, seen her as one of the invading forces. He heard Drax say that I'll do one better. Why is Gamora on Infinity War, but on Titan? But that's the only
Years ago.
That's all he knows about Gamora. So he could have accidentally snapped her, or she decided the whole scene was a mess and she wanted to get out. Or when Cap put back the Infinity Stones, that timeline collapsed as we talked about earlier, and she kind of dissipated.
I don't think the rules support your third.
Okay.
Your first implies that Tony knew specifically about everybody he snapped away. There were an awful lot of, space monkeys out there, and I don't think he went, and that one. So there was some sort of collective order given. Option 2, again, is entertaining because
She decided the whole scene was lame, and
But
she's
she's
like, I'm out of
also,
here.
that's Gamora from just, emotionally, that's the Gamora from the very beginning of the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Who doesn't give a shit about these people.
Right.
It took 2 Guardians movies to get her over to Quill's side. She's not going to hang around and say, I'm going to date him. She's going to get the hell out of it.
At the very least, this sounds like an entertaining prospect that I would like to see in the third Guardians.
If only
I think you will. Well, look, you guys did an amazing job with all this. We're going to show you a few last pictures. If AV could call up the pictures from the Electric State, that's the next project that you're working on with the Russos involved. And you could just scroll through these, AV.
Yeah, this is a book by Simon Stollenhag. Andy Machete is currently attached to direct it. And it is crazy. Sort of a post-apocalyptic alternative 1996 girl in her robot road movie. So, we need one of those.
And this will, just so you feel special. I'm behind in writing that,
That's right.
so I could talk to you.
Exactly. Now keep your cameras out. I'm going to ask the AV techs to get one more thing. I've seen a lot of giveaways here in Hall H over the years, and I decided I wanted to come prepared to give away something to each and every one of you, so keep your cameras out. I, as the publisher of Backstory Magazine, am taking down the paywall for 1 month until August 19th, and I am giving you all Avengers Endgame, our entire issue, for free. So you can put that up there. There's the link. And you could use the password, and that's all you need. You have a month to read it. And take a good picture of the kids, because I want to give a gift to you, and that's the best I could do.
So nice.
Back to you guys. I hope you will join me in giving a round of applause to my screenwriting heroes, Markus and McFeely. Thanks all.